On a small agricultural colony nestled on the edge of Earth's territory, life moved at a slow and predictable pace. There were no bustling cities here, just endless fields of crops stretching as far as the eye could see. The sky above was vast and star-filled, a constant reminder of how tiny humanity was in the grand scheme of things. Among the farmers who worked these lands was one man who preferred solitude over company. He wasn't extraordinary by any means, just someone trying to make ends meet while finding peace in the simplicity of his daily routine. Every evening, after finishing his work, he would sit outside his modest home, gazing up at the stars. They fascinated him, not because they promised adventure, but because they reminded him that there was so much more to the universe than what he knew. Little did he realize that one night, those very stars would bring something extraordinary into his life. It happened on an ordinary evening when the air was cool and still. The farmer was out in his field, checking on some equipment before heading back inside. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a low hum, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the ground beneath his feet. Looking up, he saw a strange object descending from the sky. It wasn't like anything he'd ever seen before. The craft shimmered faintly, almost as if it were bending light around itself, making it hard to focus on its exact shape. It hovered silently for a moment before touching down gently near the edge of his property. Curiosity got the better of him, and cautiously he approached the ship. A hatch opened, and out stepped a figure unlike anyone, or anything, he had ever encountered. She was tall and elegant, her skin glowing faintly with an otherworldly hue. Her clothes looked like liquid metal, shifting colors with every movement. Around her neck hung intricate jewelry that sparkled even in the dim light. Clearly, she was no ordinary visitor. With an air of confidence, she introduced herself. She belonged to a distant empire, one known for its advanced technology and warrior culture. But she hadn't come seeking war or alliances. Instead, she explained, she traveled the galaxy looking for challenges, tests of strength, wit, and courage among lesser-known species. "I've heard about your kind," she said with a playful smirk. "Resilient, adaptable, perhaps even worthy of my attention." Without giving him much time to process, she issued a challenge. She wanted him to prove himself by surviving one full day on her planet, a place filled with dangers beyond imagination. If he succeeded, she promised to acknowledge his bravery. If he failed, well, she left that part unsaid. The farmer stood there, stunned. Why him? What could this alien possibly gain from testing someone like him? But deep down, so he felt a spark of curiosity, and maybe even pride. This was his chance to show that humanity wasn't defined by its weapons or wealth, but by its ability to persevere against all odds. Taking a deep breath, he nodded. "All right," he said firmly. "I'll do it." And just like that, his quiet life was turned upside down. As the alien princess led him aboard her ship, he couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead. Whatever it was, he knew one thing for sure. It wouldn't be easy, but then again, nothing worth doing ever was. When the farmer stepped off the alien ship, he found himself in a world that looked like it belonged in a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. The ground beneath his feet shimmered faintly, as though made of glass, and towering trees with crystalline leaves stretched high into the sky. Two suns hung above, casting strange shadows that danced across the landscape. The air felt heavy, charged with energy, and every breath seemed to hum with electricity. It was beautiful. Yes, but also intimidating. The princess stood nearby, watching him closely. "This is my home," she said simply. "Survive here for one day, and you'll earn my respect." With that, she activated some kind of device on her wrist, and suddenly her form flickered out of sight. She wasn't gone entirely. Her voice came through faintly over what sounded like a speaker system. But she wouldn't be there to help him if things went wrong. He was on his own. The first challenge came quickly. As he ventured deeper into the alien terrain, he heard a low growl behind him. Turning slowly, he saw a pack of creatures emerging from the shadows. They were unlike anything he'd ever seen. Sleek, reptilian bodies covered in iridescent scales, their eyes glowing like embers. One of them bared its teeth, letting out a piercing screech before charging toward him. Panic surged through him, but he forced himself to stay calm. Running wouldn't work. These creatures were faster than he was. Instead, he remembered something he'd learned back on Earth. Predators often attacked when they sensed fear or weakness. Thinking quickly, he grabbed a long branch lying nearby and used it to create a makeshift spear. Then, using rocks and vines he found scattered around, he set up a simple trap. When the lead creature lunged at him, he sidestepped just in time, causing it to stumble into the trap. The rest of the pack hesitated, confused by the sudden obstacle, giving him enough time to slip away. But the trials didn't stop there. As the twin suns climbed higher in the sky, the temperature soared. Sweat poured down his face, and his throat burned with thirst. Water was nowhere to be found, at least not on the surface. Remembering old survival shows he'd watched late at night, he dug into the soft soil near a cluster of plants, hoping to find moisture underground. After several attempts, his hands finally hit damp earth. Scooping up handfuls of mud, he squeezed out drops of water, quenching his thirst just enough to keep going. Later, a storm rolled in without warning. Dark clouds gathered overhead, and bolts of lightning crackled across the sky. The wind howled, sending shards of crystal-like debris flying through the air. Shelter was essential, but finding it proved difficult. Using fallen branches and large leaves, he constructed a crude lean-to against a rocky outcrop. Huddled inside, he braced himself as the storm raged around him, grateful for the small protection his shelter provided. Throughout all this, the princess observed silently, her holographic projections allowing her to see everything he did. At first, she had been amused, expecting him to falter early on. But as the hours passed, her amusement turned to curiosity and then to admiration. His methods weren't flashy or high-tech, but they worked. Where others might have relied on brute strength or advanced tools, he used patience, observation, and clever thinking. These were qualities she hadn't anticipated, and they intrigued her more than she cared to admit. By the time night fell, the farmer was exhausted. Every muscle in his body ached, and his clothes were torn and filthy. Yet despite everything, he pressed on, determined to see the challenge through. Somewhere along the way, his motivation shifted. It wasn't about proving himself to the princess anymore. It was about showing that humanity could endure, even in the most hostile environments. And though he didn't know it yet, his resilience was leaving an impression far greater than either of them realized. As the second sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the alien landscape, the farmer finally reached the designated meeting point. His body was battered, his clothes torn and caked with dirt. But there was a quiet pride in his eyes. He had survived, not because he was stronger or faster than the dangers around him, but because he had adapted, thought on his feet, and refused to give up. When the princess appeared before him, stepping out of her shimmering ship, she didn't say anything at first. She simply looked at him, her expression unreadable. "You've done well," she said after a moment, her voice softer than it had been when they first met. "Better than I expected." It wasn't just praise, it was acknowledgement. For the first time, she saw him not as a random test subject, but as someone who represented something greater, his species' ability to endure against all odds. The farmer nodded, too tired to speak much. But instead of leaving it at that, the princess surprised him by inviting him aboard her ship. "Tell me about your world," she said, as they settled into a spacious chamber filled with glowing panels and floating holograms. At first he hesitated. What could he possibly say that would interest someone from such an advanced civilization? But then he began talking about Earth's struggles, its wars and peace treaties, its fragile ecosystems, and the beauty of its people working together despite their differences. She listened intently, asking questions now and then. In return, she shared glimpses of her own society, a culture built on strength and conquest, where challenges like the ones she'd issued were common. Yet beneath the surface, as she admitted, there was a loneliness to it all. Her people valued power above all else, often dismissing those they deemed weaker without truly understanding them. Listening to the farmer's stories made her realize how much they might be missing. Over the course of their conversation, something shifted between them. The playful arrogance she had shown earlier gave way to genuine curiosity and respect. For the farmer, it was the same. He no longer saw her as just an alien princess playing games, but as someone burdened by expectations, searching for meaning beyond her role. By the time they returned to Earth, their bond had deepened into mutual admiration. The princess left him with a promise. She would advocate for humanity within her empire, in ensuring that others saw the resilience and creativity she had witnessed firsthand. As for the farmer, he went back to his fields, carrying memories of an adventure he never could have imagined. Though life resumed its usual rhythm, he knew things were different now. Somewhere out there, among the stars, humanity had gained an unexpected ally. Word of their encounter spread slowly, passed down through generations until it became legend. People spoke of the humble farmer who faced impossible odds and earned the respect of an alien warrior race. More importantly, what the story inspired future explorers and diplomats to approach interstellar relations not as competitions, but as opportunities for growth. And though neither the farmer nor the princess sought recognition, their connection reminded everyone who heard the tale of one simple truth. Respect isn't given, it's earned through courage, humility, and understanding.